The Zentharian Deep Space Research Station hung in the void like a particularly expensive mistake, its crystalline spires catching the amber light of the gas giant Coraxis Prime. One might assume that a facility designed to study the galaxy's most lethal predators would possess a certain gravitas, perhaps an air of professional competence. One would be tragically optimistic. Station Commander Zelix prided himself on running what the Galactic Research Consortium generously termed a cutting-edge xenobiological facility. In reality, it was more of a very expensive zoo for things that could kill you in 17 different ways before your nervous system registered pain. The commander's species, the Zentharians, had evolved on a garden world where the most dangerous creature was a particularly aggressive flowering bush. This perhaps explained why their risk assessment protocols were roughly equivalent to asking a toddler to evaluate nuclear reactor safety. The station's crown jewel, contained behind 17 layers of quantum barriers and enough warning signs to paper a small moon, was a Vorthak Ripper from the death world of Sanguinaria. These delightful creatures stood 3 meters tall when fully extended, possessed claws that could slice through titanium like warm butter, and had the charming habit of hunting by sound, scent, and the electromagnetic signatures of terror. The consortium's xenobiologists had spent considerable resources acquiring this particular specimen, mainly because they were the sort of people who collect venomous snakes and call it research. Dr. Vex, the station's chief xenobiologist and a member of the notoriously cautious Quillex species, had opposed housing the creature from the beginning. The Quillex had survived their homeworld's frequent apocalyptic events by developing an almost supernatural ability to recognize terrible ideas. Dr. Vex could spot a catastrophe brewing from 3 star systems away, which made his current employment something of a professional nightmare. The containment protocols are flawless, Commander Zelix had assured him during their last staff meeting, displaying the sort of confidence that preceded most galactic disasters. 17 redundant systems, quantum-locked barriers, and neural suppressors calibrated specifically for Vorthak physiology. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Dr. Vex had developed a nervous twitch. The station housed a diverse crew of researchers, technicians, and one exchange student from the notorious death world called Earth. Kira Blackwood was supposedly there to study interspecies biological adaptation, though she spent most of her time demonstrating humanity's most puzzling evolutionary development, the ability to sleep through literally anything. The human had arrived 6 months ago as part of some misguided cultural exchange program, and the crew still hadn't quite figured out what to make of her. Humans, they'd been warned, were death worlders of the highest caliber. Earth was a nightmare planet where everything was either trying to eat you, poison you, or crush you under its excessive gravity. The planet's weather patterns alone should have prevented the evolution of intelligent life. Yet somehow humans had not only survived, but thrived in conditions that would liquefy most civilized species. Kira, however, seemed determined to subvert every expectation about Deathworlder behavior. Rather than displaying the hypervigilant aggression the crew anticipated, she spent most of her waking hours in a state of profound relaxation that bordered on comatose. She napped in the common areas, dozed during lectures, and once fell asleep while standing upright during a fire drill. The security chief, a Moravian named Thorn, whose species had evolved from pack hunters, found this behavior deeply unsettling. "It's not natural," Thorn muttered during shift changes. "Predators don't sleep that much. It's like she doesn't recognize any threats." What Thorn failed to understand was that humans had indeed evolved on a death world, but they'd done so by becoming the thing other predators were afraid of. Kira's casual attitude toward danger wasn't ignorance. It was the supreme confidence of an apex predator taking a nap between meals. The station's other residents gave Kira a wide berth, partly out of respect for her Deathworlder status and partly because she had an unsettling habit of unconsciously adapting to threats that didn't exist. She'd arrived with a duffel bag containing what she called basic supplies, but which the security scanners had flagged as enough improvised weapons to outfit a small militia. A roll of duct tape, some zip ties, and a few protein bars somehow constituted a survival kit that could, theoretically, level a city block. The day everything went sideways started like any other, with Dr. Vex reviewing containment protocols and discovering new reasons for existential dread. The morning shift had reported minor fluctuations in the Vorthak Ripper's enclosure, which was roughly equivalent to reporting minor instabilities in a fusion reactor. By galactic safety standards, they should have evacuated the station and called for a specialized containment team. By Zentharian standards, it was Tuesday. Commander Zelix dismissed the concerns with his characteristic optimism. "The systems are designed to handle far greater stresses," he announced during the morning briefing. "A few minor fluctuations are well within normal parameters." Dr. Vex's twitch intensified. Security Chief Thorne had spent the morning running diagnostics on the containment systems, discovering what he politely termed discrepancies in the quantum barrier matrix. The barriers were holding, technically, but several backup systems were operating on borrowed time and optimistic thinking. He'd filed a report recommending immediate maintenance, which was currently sitting in Commander Zelix's inbox, beneath 17 other non-critical alerts. Meanwhile, Kira had claimed her usual spot in the station's common area, a broad space with transparent aluminium viewports offering spectacular views of Corax's Prime's roiling atmosphere. She'd arranged herself in what appeared to be a standard-issue station chair, though she'd somehow made it look like the most comfortable piece of furniture in the galaxy. Her legs were tucked beneath her, one arm draped over the chair's back, head tilted at an angle that should have resulted in a permanent crick in her neck. The common area also featured several other pieces of furniture, including a few spare chairs that had been left scattered around from the previous evening's impromptu cultural exchange presentation. One chair sat particularly close to Kira's position, close enough that she could reach it without fully opening her eyes. Dr. Vex had tried to warn everyone about the mounting signs of containment failure, but his concerns were dismissed as typical Quillex paranoia. His species' survival instincts were so finely tuned that they could predict disasters with uncomfortable accuracy. But this also meant they spent most of their time in a state of controlled panic. Other species had learned to filter out Quillex warnings, assuming they were overreacting to routine situations. This was generally a mistake. At precisely 1347 station time, 17 redundant safety systems failed in a cascade that would later be studied as a masterpiece of Murphy's Law. The quantum barriers flickered, the neural suppressors experienced what the technical manual euphemistically called temporary discontinuation, and the Vorthak Ripper discovered that its cage had become more of a suggestion than a requirement. The first sign of trouble was the sound of screaming metal as 3 tons of concentrated murder tore through containment barriers like tissue paper. The second sign was the station's emergency alert system activating with a series of alarms that could wake the dead. The third sign was the complete and total panic of every sentient being on the station, except for Kira, who shifted slightly in her chair and continued napping. Commander Zelix's voice crackled over the intercom, his usual confidence replaced by the sort of high-pitched terror that suggested immediate bowel evacuation. "All personnel to emergency stations. Code Crimson. Repeat, Code Crimson. The Vorthak has breached containment." Throughout the station, crew members scrambled for emergency protocols that no one had seriously expected to use. The Zentharians activated their emergency stasis pods. The Quillex began broadcasting distress signals to every available frequency, and the Moravians started hunting in packs, because that's what Moravians did when confronted with danger. Dr. Vex, who had been expecting this exact scenario for 6 months, calmly walked to his emergency station and began documenting the disaster for posterity. His report would later become required reading at the Galactic Safety Commission, though few people would believe its conclusions. Security Chief Thorne marshaled his teams with military precision, deploying every weapon and defensive system the station possessed. Plasma rifles, neural disruptors, gravitational containment fields, everything that could theoretically stop a Vorthak Ripper from turning the station into an all-you-can-eat buffet. The Vorthak Ripper, meanwhile, was having the time of its life. After months of confinement, it was finally free to indulge its natural instincts, which primarily involved finding interesting things to dismember. The creature stood 3 meters tall when fully extended, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming like black diamond, claws extended like curved swords designed by a particularly creative sociopath. Its sensory organs detected dozens of potential prey scattered throughout the station. The rapid heartbeats, the electromagnetic signatures of terror, the delicious scent of adrenaline flooding alien bloodstreams. It was like being released into the galaxy's most expensive delicatessen. The beast began its hunt with methodical precision, starting with the nearest targets. A Zentharian technician found himself face to face with 3 meters of evolutionary perfection designed specifically for killing things. His last coherent thought was a profound appreciation for his species' pacifist philosophy, right before the Ripper demonstrated why pacifism was a luxury reserved for species that never encountered real predators. Security teams converged on the creature's position, their plasma rifles whining as they charged. The first volley struck dead center, plasma bolts designed to stop a charging Coraxian battle rhino, splashing harmlessly against the Ripper's natural armor. The creature turned toward the security teams with what might have been amusement, if one could read expressions on a face designed by nightmares. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of why Vorthak Rippers were considered apex predators on a death world that made Earth look like a retirement community. The security team's advanced weapons proved roughly as effective as harsh language, while their tactical training crumbled in the face of an opponent that moved like liquid death and thought like a chess grandmaster with homicidal tendencies. Chief Thorne watched his carefully coordinated defensive positions collapse in real time, his teams scattered like leaves before a hurricane. The creature wasn't just hunting, it was playing with them, demonstrating the same casual cruelty that cats showed to mice, if cats were 3 meters tall and equipped with molecular edge claws. Throughout the chaos, emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off sections of the station in a desperate attempt to contain the threat. The automated systems worked exactly as designed, trapping crew members in secure areas, while the Ripper methodically worked its way through the station's defenses. Dr. Vex, safely sealed in his emergency station, continued documenting the disaster with the sort of professional detachment that came from expecting the worst-case scenario. His notes would later prove invaluable to xenobiologists studying predator behavior, though they would raise uncomfortable questions about galactic safety protocols. The Ripper moved through the station like a force of nature, leaving a trail of destroyed equipment and traumatized survivors. Its hunting pattern showed a disturbing intelligence, systematically eliminating defensive positions while herding potential prey into increasingly confined spaces. This wasn't random violence. It was strategic thinking applied to mass murder. Commander Zelix, barricaded in his command center, watched the security feeds with growing horror. Every defensive measure they'd implemented, every protocol they'd established, every backup system they'd installed, all of it was proving about as effective as asking the creature politely to return to its cage. "How long until the distress signal reaches the nearest patrol?" he asked his communications officer, a Quillex whose natural pessimism was finally proving appropriate. 17 hours for signal propagation, minimum 12 hours for response, came the reply. Assuming they don't classify this as a containment breach requiring orbital sterilization, the commander's face turned an interesting shade of green. Orbital sterilization was the Galactic Safety Commission's preferred method for dealing with escaped Death World predators. It was effective, efficient, and had the added benefit of ensuring that embarrassing incidents didn't get reported to the media. Meanwhile, the Vorthak Ripper continued its systematic hunt, working its way through the station's levels with predatory patience. It had already eliminated the primary security teams, neutralized the automated defenses, and was now moving toward the station's central sections where the remaining crew had barricaded themselves. The creature's sensory organs detected something interesting as it approached the common area. A steady, rhythmic electromagnetic signature that didn't match the panicked patterns of the other prey. This signature was calm, regular, almost meditative. The Ripper paused, its alien intelligence puzzling over this anomaly. In its extensive hunting experience across multiple star systems, prey typically displayed one of two patterns when confronted with imminent death: fight or flight. The electromagnetic signatures of terror were as familiar to the Ripper as breathing, the rapid heartbeats and stress hormones that indicated a creature's recognition of its own mortality. This signal was different. It was the electromagnetic signature of something deeply, profoundly asleep. The Ripper's predatory instincts found this fascinating. In its experience, only apex predators could sleep so soundly in the presence of danger. The creature that could nap while death stalked the corridors was either supremely confident in its own abilities or too stupid to recognize the threat. Given the Ripper's recent experiences with the station's security forces, it was leaning toward the latter explanation. The creature approached the common area with growing curiosity, its claws clicking against the deck plating with a sound like wind chimes made from funeral bells. The electromagnetic signature grew stronger, accompanied by the soft, rhythmic sound of breathing that suggested its source was completely unaware of its approaching doom. The Ripper paused at the entrance to the common area, its sensory organs drinking in the details of the scene before it. The space was large and open, with transparent viewports offering a spectacular view of the gas giant below. Scattered furniture suggested recent occupancy, and in the center of it all sat a single figure in a standard station chair. The figure was small by galactic standards, bipedal, with the pale skin and dark hair characteristic of the species the station records identified as human. The creature was arranged in the chair with casual comfort, one leg tucked beneath it, head tilted at an angle that exposed the vulnerable curve of its neck. The Ripper's hunting instincts catalogued the target automatically. Approximately 60 kilograms, minimal natural defenses, no visible weapons, completely unaware of its surroundings. By every measure that mattered, this was the easiest prey the creature had encountered since its escape. And yet something felt wrong. The Ripper had hunted across 17 different worlds, facing everything from armored behemoths to swarm creatures that attacked in thousands. It had learned to trust its instincts. And those instincts were currently screaming warnings that its conscious mind couldn't quite process. The human's electromagnetic signature wasn't just calm. It was the signature of a creature so secure in its environment that it felt no need for vigilance. The Ripper had seen this pattern before, but only in apex predators that had never encountered anything capable of threatening them. But this creature was obviously prey. It was small, soft, defenseless, and completely vulnerable. The Ripper's logical mind overrode its instinctual warnings, and it began moving toward its target with predatory grace. Kira Blackwood was having the most wonderful dream about her grandmother's apple orchard back on Earth, where the biggest threat was the occasional wasp, and the greatest challenge was reaching the highest branches. In her dream, she was 8 years old again, spending summer afternoons in the shade of century-old trees while her grandmother told stories about the old country and fed her cookies that somehow never affected her figure. The dream was interrupted by a sound that her subconscious mind filed under large predator approaching, a classification system developed during humanity's long evolutionary history of sharing the planet with things that viewed bipedal primates as convenient snack foods. Kira's eyes remained closed, but her breathing shifted slightly as her nervous system began the process of transitioning from sleep to wakefulness. This was a gradual process, refined over millions of years of evolution, designed to give humans a few precious seconds to assess their situation before committing to full consciousness. Her auditory cortex processed the approaching footsteps, heavy, deliberate, with the slight scraping sound of claws against metal. Large creature, definitely predatory, moving with conscious stealth. Her olfactory system detected unfamiliar pheromones, the scent markers of an alien species designed for hunting. Her electromagnetic sensitivity, a throwback to humanity's early days of dodging lightning strikes and magnetic storms, registered the creature's bioelectric field. All of this information was processed and filed away while Kira remained perfectly still, her breathing unchanged, her electromagnetic signature maintaining its steady rhythm. To external observation, she appeared to be in the deepest stage of sleep. The Vorthak Ripper approached to within 3 meters, close enough to strike, but far enough to savor the moment. In its alien psychology, this was the moment of greatest satisfaction, when prey remained unaware of their fate until the final instant. The creature's claws extended to their full length, molecular edge weapons capable of slicing through the human's fragile body with minimal effort. It raised one clawed appendage, preparing to end the hunt with a single surgical strike. That was when Kira's left hand, moving with the casual precision of someone reaching for a coffee cup, wrapped around the nearest chair leg and swung it in a horizontal arc that intersected with the Ripper's center mass at roughly the speed of sound. The impact was immediate, decisive, and absolutely devastating. The chair, constructed of standard station materials designed to withstand normal use and the occasional emergency, met the Ripper's supposedly impenetrable exoskeleton with the sort of physics that would later require several doctoral dissertations to fully explain. The creature's natural armor, evolved to deflect plasma bolts and resist molecular disruptors, proved to have one significant weakness. It had never encountered a death welder who viewed furniture as improvised weaponry. The Ripper traveled approximately 4 meters horizontally before impacting the far wall with enough force to leave an impression that would require extensive repairs. Its alien nervous system, designed to process pain as useful survival information, discovered that some experiences transcend the concept of useful and venture directly into existentially problematic. By the time the creature's consciousness finished processing what had happened to it was already dead. Kira lowered the chair, now slightly bent but still recognizably furniture, and settled back into her original position, with the sort of casual movement that suggested the entire incident had been a minor interruption to her nap. Her eyes remained closed, her breathing returned to its steady rhythm, and within 30 seconds she was fast asleep again. The common area fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant sound of emergency alarms that no longer seemed quite so urgent. Security Chief Thorne was the first to arrive on the scene, having followed the Ripper's trail through a combination of destroyed equipment and traumatized crew members. He burst into the common area with a full tactical team, plasma rifles charged and ready, prepared to face the galaxy's most dangerous predator in a final desperate battle. Instead, he found Kira napping peacefully in her chair, while 3 meters away, the Vorthak Ripper's remains decorated the far wall in a pattern that suggested very bad things had happened to it very quickly. The security chief stood frozen, his mind struggling to process the scene. The Ripper had torn through his best teams like they were made of paper, shrugged off weapons capable of stopping armored vehicles, and demonstrated the sort of tactical intelligence that made it a nightmare opponent. And it had been killed by a napping college student with a piece of furniture. Dr. Vex arrived moments later, his scientific training warring with the evidence of his senses. He approached the Ripper's remains with professional curiosity, his scanners recording data that would revolutionize xenobiological understanding of Death World evolution. The impact force was approximately 47,000 newtons, he announced to no one in particular, his voice carrying the sort of academic detachment that came from discovering something that challenged fundamental assumptions about physics. Applied over a contact area of roughly 12 square centimeters, the resulting pressure differential exceeded the creature's structural integrity by several orders of magnitude. Commander Zelix arrived with the remainder of the command staff, his face cycling through several shades of disbelief as he took in the scene. The creature that had terrorized his station, defeated his security forces, and threatened to end his career in orbital sterilization was sprawled against his bulkhead like a discarded toy. "How?" he whispered. Though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer, Dr. Vex consulted his scanners, cross-referencing the impact data with his files on human physiology. "According to my analysis, the human generated sufficient kinetic energy to overcome the Ripper's natural defenses through the application of basic mechanical principles. Lever arm advantage, rotational momentum, and what appears to be genetically encoded experience with improvised weapons. She killed it with a chair," Chief Thorne said flatly, "without standing up, while asleep. Technically, she was transitioning between sleep states," Dr. Vex corrected with scientific precision. Though the distinction may be academic given the results, the assembled crew stood in contemplative silence, each processing the implications in their own way. The Zentharians were revising their understanding of Death World evolution, the Quillex were updating their threat assessment protocols, and the Moravians were wondering if they should add furniture to their weapons inventory. Kira, meanwhile, continued napping with the profound contentment of someone who had successfully dealt with a minor annoyance and could now return to more important activities, like dreaming about apple orchards. Commander Zelix eventually found his voice, though it came out several octaves higher than usual. "Someone needs to file a report about this," Dr. Vex nodded, already composing the incident summary in his head. It would be a masterpiece of scientific understatement, describing the casual lethality of Death World evolution in language dry enough to preserve specimens. The report would eventually become required reading at the Galactic Safety Commission, though most readers would assume it was fictional. "What do we tell the consortium?" asked the communications officer, who was already dreading the conversation with his superiors. "The truth," Commander Zelix replied, though he wasn't sure anyone would believe it. "The Vorthak Ripper was neutralized by our exchange student during a routine nap." Chief Thorne was already updating his security protocols, adding new categories for furniture-based combat and unconscious threat response. His training manuals would need extensive revision, particularly the sections on assessing human capabilities. "Should we wake her?" someone asked, gesturing toward Kira's sleeping form. The question hung in the air while everyone considered the implications. If she could eliminate a Vorthak Ripper while asleep, what might she do if actually disturbed? Let's not, Dr. Vex suggested diplomatically. Deathworlders require adequate rest to maintain their psychological equilibrium. The crew filed out of the common area with new appreciation for the delicate balance of galactic civilization. Somewhere in the vast cosmos, evolution had produced creatures so casually dangerous that they could eliminate apex predators without interrupting their afternoon nap. The emergency alarms finally fell silent, replaced by the gentle hum of life support systems returning to normal operation. Maintenance crews would spend the next week repairing blast damage and replacing destroyed equipment, while xenobiologists across the galaxy updated their files on human capabilities. Station operations resumed with enhanced safety protocols and a new understanding of why Deathworlds produced such effective exchange students. The research program continued, though future specimens would be selected with greater attention to their potential interaction with napping humans. Kira slept on, dreaming of apple orchards and summer afternoons, blissfully unaware that she had just redefined the galactic understanding of casual lethality. In her dreams, the greatest danger was still the occasional wasp, and the most challenging decision was choosing which tree offered the best shade. The aftermath of what historians would later call the chair incident rippled through galactic society with the sort of understated chaos that accompanied paradigm shifts. Within hours, emergency bulletins were transmitted across 17 star systems, each translation becoming progressively more incredulous as alien linguists struggled to convey concepts that challenged basic assumptions about physics, biology, and the nature of furniture. The Galactic Safety Commission convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of Deathworlders treating apex predators as minor inconveniences. The session lasted 14 hours and produced a document that essentially boiled down to, "Humans are terrifying and we should probably be nicer to them." The document's appendices included detailed analyses of improvised weapon potential in common household items, with special attention paid to seating arrangements. Meanwhile, furniture manufacturers across the galaxy experienced an unexpected surge in demand as various species attempted to weaponize their home decor. The Zentharian Home Goods Consortium reported a 340% increase in chair sales, though most buyers were disappointed to discover that furniture was only as effective as the person wielding it. A Quillix merchant spent 3 days attempting to eliminate a houseplant with a dining set before accepting that Deathworld evolution couldn't be purchased at retail prices. The academic community erupted in scholarly debate about human capabilities, with particular attention paid to the phenomenon of combat napping. Dr. Vex's incident report spawned 17 different research projects, 43 doctoral dissertations, and one particularly ambitious study attempting to quantify the lethality of sleeping humans per unit of furniture available. Xenobiologists began requesting human volunteers for observational studies, though most requests were politely declined after potential subjects learned they involved being locked in rooms with dangerous predators. The few humans who agreed to participate consistently disappointed researchers by either befriending the creatures or accidentally eliminating them while reaching for snacks. Back on the research station, Kira finally woke from her nap approximately 4 hours after achieving galactic infamy. She stretched, yawned, and looked around the common area with the mild confusion of someone who'd slept through something important but couldn't quite remember what. "Did I miss anything interesting?" she asked Chief Thorne, who happened to be passing by during his 17th security sweep of the day. The Moravian security chief paused, his expression cycling through several emotions before settling on profound resignation. "Nothing significant," he replied, deciding that some conversations were better avoided entirely. "Just another quiet day in deep space." Kira nodded and headed toward the station's cafeteria, stepping around the repair crews who were still patching the wall where the Vorthak Ripper had achieved its final resting place. She paused briefly to examine the crater-like impression, her head tilted in mild curiosity. "Maintenance should probably fix that," she observed helpfully, before continuing on her way. The repair crew exchanged meaningful glances. They'd been working on the wall for 6 hours and had made precisely 0 progress in removing what their sensors identified as deeply embedded alien remains. The impact had been so violent that the creature's molecular structure had partially fused with the station's hull plating, creating what Dr. Vex euphemistically termed biological integration. "We're going to need specialized equipment," the crew chief reported to Commander Zelix. And possibly a priest. The Zentharian Deep Space Research Station hung in the void like a particularly expensive lesson in humility, its crystalline spires once again catching the amber light of Coraxis Prime. One might assume that a facility designed to study the galaxy's most lethal predators would learn from such experiences, perhaps developing new appreciation for the subtle dangers of the universe. One would be tragically optimistic, but occasionally delightfully surprised by the quiet heroism of a napping death worlder who just wanted to finish her dreams in peace.